instead of getting shameful, get curious about yourself. Like instead of, I'm not letting that out, I'm so ashamed that I did that when I was younger. It's like, get curious why you did it, you know, get curious what it would feel like if you forgave yourself for it. You know, what would that do for your life if you were able to forgive yourself of that shame? Instead of being locked down in things, questions and being curious opens things up. It makes us a little braver step by step. It lets the light in.
Welcome to Silver Lining Moments. I'm your host, Kerry Raleigh. It's been a while since I published my last podcast episode. I am very excited to be back. In case you find yourself wondering what I've been up to or what the heck a silver lining moment is, please check out our website, www.silverliningmoments.com. Let me know what you think. Send me an email at kerry@silverliningmoments.com. Now to this episode. Our guest is Elaine Kelly. She is an artist, author, and tribe builder. In our episode, she shares her life journey with us, which includes some amazing things, such as unintentionally driving off a 21-foot cliff, but for some serendipity, she would have died. Driving across the United States in an MG midget, studying Sufism, transpersonal psychology, Jungian dream work, ancient symbols while she was in California, practicing daily meditation, the reawakening of her artist soul, painting and selling jewelry and clothing in Hawaii, co-owning art galleries in Florida, serving as a disaster mental health coordinator in Florida, writing books. She is now living in the Gulf Coast of Florida. And through all of her experiences, she asked herself some of life's biggest questions. Who am I? What happens after death? And what is my life's purpose? These answers came to her as she observed her own thoughts. And now Elaine has a very clear mission and vision for her life. Her mission? Share wisdom, tools, and the roadmap to illuminate your soul's path, leading to happiness, ease, and awakening. Her vision: make the world more peaceful by teaching people to alleviate suffering pitfalls so they fully embrace life in the present moment. These questions: who am I? What happens after death? What is my life's purpose? Are some of the biggest questions each of us ask ourselves. And each of us are going to have different answers. Finding them can be difficult. Many of us, myself including, have stumbled as we searched for these answers. But answering them and finding these answers does not have to be hard. Through her experiences and through her own search, Elaine discovered how to find these answers with ease. In her first teaching memoir, Roadmap to Ease, The Journey to Your Awakened Life, which will be released this November, she shares the wisdom and tools and the roadmap that she used and that you can use to illuminate your soul's path, and so that you can fulfill your life's purpose with ease. In our conversation, we don't talk politics, business, or about social issues. But I feel like our conversation is relevant to the wounds we feel individually and those we collectively feel in our politics, business, and society. Her insights and perspective have a healing touch. At least they did to me. They offered ways how I could look at things going around in the world by connecting within myself and transform division and turmoil into connection and ease. Check out her website at elaynekelley.com, and that is elaynekelley.com. And listen to this episode and discover why my conversation with Elaine gave me a moment of sharing lined by unity. If you like this episode, Please like, comment, and or give Silver Lining Moments podcast a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. These go a long way in helping us expand our podcast to others so that others may find it too. I hope you enjoyed this Silver Lining Moments episode where we expand love and light, one person at a time, one story at a time, one silver lining moment at a time. Elaine, thank you so much for joining us here on Silver Lining Moments. And your background, actually, as we were talking just before I pressed record, you had said something about you had lived 87 lives up until now. And we'll share some of that, or perhaps all of it. But I think what's coming through to me is your energy. And we have just met, but I feel just this warm energy, full of life spirit. So I'm glad that we get to share that today. So thank you for being here.
Well, and thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to meet you and to see your energy. I'm just, feeling who you are as a person and what you're doing in the world. And it's wonderful and so needed.
Thank you. I thought we would start with you are finishing a book called Roadmap to Ease, The Journey to Your Awakened Self. Why don't we start there? Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
I sure can. My mission is for humanity to wake up to our punishing thoughts. And that started me on a journey when I was really young. I realized that I had been super creative growing up and, even kind of through high school, although right after that, I felt myself shutting down creatively and caught up in my head and obsessive about my weight. I was obsessed about the food that I ate. I was, for once in my life, everything was outward focused instead of inward focused. And what I realized is it was my thoughts that were the problem. It wasn't my creativity. I knew that it was there, even though it was lost somewhere. Okay. And, I knew my body wasn't what was my obsession? I became perfectionistic. I had all these paints and canvas, but I felt like I couldn't get paint on canvas anymore. I couldn't do those things because I wanted it to be perfect. So it started me on a spiritual path, really. I mean, I drove off a 20-foot cliff in an MG midget accidentally.
Is this literal or figuratively?
No, I did. I was probably, 19 or 20. They were building I-275 in St. Pete, and I hit third gear in MG midget, and I saw the lines in the road end, and I knew that I was airborne. And I had an experience where there was the part of me that was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I knew I was driving off into the abyss, but then there was another part of me that was just watching. That was super calm, and that was like, oh, Elaine's going to die. And that was a spiritual experience that really led me on a path. It brought me back to who we all really are. And we are the watcher of all the actions. And when we learn to do that, when we separate ourselves from our thoughts, they're no longer punishing because we are not them. And so that is my mission, and that's the mission of the book, is who is the I am that sits back and watches everything. And when we learn how to do that, our life profoundly changes.
There's so much that you said there. So let me see if I can go back a little bit. One, what happened?
There were 3 reasons that I lived. It was midnight, so of course there was nobody there. I had just been in the Cayman Islands and drank horrible something down there, and I had smoked cigarettes, and I got so sick from whatever I drank, it made me quit smoking cigarettes. Number 1, the gas tank broke, and I was, covered with gasoline. Had I been smoking, and it was midnight, I would have gone up in flames.
Prior to this Cayman Island experience, most likely you would have been smoking in the car.
I would have.
Okay.
I just left a bar and I would have been smoking. I had just traded a Volkswagen for this MG midget. I traded my roommate while I was in the Cayman Islands. The trade happened. Volkswagen had no engine up front. The MG did. The impact would have killed me.
So now the engine in the MG midget saved you.
Yep.
Wow.
The other thing was there happened to be ambulance drivers sitting there smoking a joint. I found this out afterwards because I had met them at my birthday party like a few days before. And they were sitting there watching my car drive off. So they were there to call people to get me up on ropes, which I don't remember any of that, and take me to the hospital. So all these things, my life was saved, which I would have been there for like a day and a half because it happened on a Friday night. I would have been there till like Monday morning because I couldn't have got out of there. And there was nobody anywhere. You know, it was.
When you talk about like angels or serendipitous moments, things are there to keep you, to help you.
Yes.
You know, those would be
absolutely
examples of silver lining moments.
Yes, all lined up in a row.
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
That's just, and you were 19 at the time.
I think I was 19, 20, yeah, right in there.
Were you injured? Were you?
I had a cut on my knee and a little cut on my head that didn't even, that my knee required stitches, my head didn't. I didn't have a concussion. I left the hospital in the middle of the night. Friends came and picked me up.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And awesome at the same time.
Right. The state made the whole thing go away. They, like the next day they came and dumped, because the road wasn't blocked off. They came and like piled dirt up. The ambulance records disappeared.
Really?
My car being towed disappeared. Yeah, it was very interesting.
You could have like a multi-million-dollar lawsuit.
Yeah, they knew that.
They knew that.
Yeah. But,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it was, you know, there was a silver lining to it that it woke me up to, what was that? That was, you know, that watcher that was just watching me, quote, die. Because I felt like, well, there's something that's living on because...
Yeah. I had a car accident on 95 in Florida. It was pretty... It looked worse than what it like was, but like where I was driving, and there are 3 lanes at the time, and I was in the middle lane, I think, and the car to the left of me was driving like next to the meridian, and he's just a little bit ahead of me, but a third car comes zooping around, cuts him off, so hits his corner into the meridian, where he then hits the meridian, flips up, and then lands right in front of me as we're driving on, you know, really fast, and then all of us go careening through another couple of lanes. And as that was happening, my airbag went off, and that little bit of how you said the watcher, I didn't quite get it, but at the time I felt like someone or something was there holding me back.
Yes.
Like the car was doing all this, and it was like scary but calming at the same time.
Exactly.
That sounds exactly.
Yeah, it is. It's that calm place that, and maybe it's when we know that we've completely lost control, which is what we do in the dying process. You know, is we can't stop it.
Yeah.
And so maybe it is, you know, just that calm that watches.
Wow.
And I've had the experience since then, and it's very similar to that. So
when we lose control, we think it's going to be so scary, but yet it's reassuring that there's a calm, a peaceful thing.
Exactly.
Just as you start thinking of like dying and stuff, which we're all going to do someday, it's nice to think that it could be a peaceful, or maybe not could be, maybe it will be a peaceful, calming experience.
Yeah, and that's another whole topic of mine is dying, and I have, you know, more experiences around that. I think our culture doesn't acknowledge death, and because of it, we don't fully live, because we dance around it, we don't talk about it with our families, and so we miss so many connections in life because we're scared. You know, I was thinking recently, like when I was younger, there's no way I could have held my animal while they were being put to sleep and things like that. And then when you overcome that fear and do it, then you get to watch the piece. Then you get to watch your dog go and put his hand in the vet's eyes and look into the vet's eyes and say, it's okay. You know, it's like, it's more, we integrate living and dying in our mortal body. Yeah. And it expands our consciousness because we embrace all of it. When we're not embracing what death is and what represents and I had those lessons because I lived with hep C for 40 years.
What's Hep C?
It's a life-threatening disease, and so when I was diagnosed, I had no idea if I already had liver cancer. I mean, it's a deadly disease, and a lot of people at the time that I was diagnosed did die from it. And I didn't want to do traditional treatment, so I didn't. I studied and I did everything that I could do for myself, and I didn't go the chemotherapy route and all of that. But consequently, I walked with death on my shoulder every day, because when you're living with something that,
people tell you people die from this all the time.
Oh yeah, when you have, the doctors look at you and go, so you want to die, you don't want to get treatment, so you want to die. So, well, no, not really, that's not. But I didn't get the test to, find out what it was. I lived with it consciously every day, and I didn't have to, but my choice was to use the virus as a gift, a silver lining, and to live every day to the fullest, and to remember death is always on our shoulder, always. Yeah. And it became just fine. It became just fine. And I lived long enough, thank the goddess, that there is now a cure that's easy. And it was really hard for me to take it. It was really hard I had to do like a ritual, because I felt like the virus had been such a gift to me, and I cohabitated so peacefully with it. It was just like, oh, well, what am I doing here? And
but when the cure came,
I waited. I actually waited a couple of more years. To get right with killing something that I felt like was a silver lining in my life. And
is there a question of who will I be without this virus? Or will
not
I be
so much that is like I'm going down another medical path when my body has served me well here, and I've been cohabitating just fine. Maybe I'll just go to my death, with that being just fine without doing anything.
I see.
So it was kind of like, well, this drug is kind of new, and is it going to do something that down the line might not be good?
And how long ago was that?
Probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. And now you're Hep C free?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Very good.
Yes, I am.
I'm just thinking one of those times where it is, the timing of it was such that it gave you the chance to have that experience of living with the virus, learning the lessons that you did. But now it's like, okay, now it's time for, your body served you, it served you, but now let's make it a little easier for you, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was at peace, but, I had to, I acknowledged it all.
Yeah.
I acknowledged the gifts of the Hep C. I acknowledged the gifts of the medicine that came that, would ultimately cure me, and the ease that would come with my consciousness, which it really didn't end up that much different,
I was just going to say how you were going through the process and acknowledging it all as it was happening reminds me of mindfulness. And I know you're a mindfulness coach.
Yes.
And I want to talk about all that, but I still want to go back to my other questions with roadmap to ease.
Yes.
So stay tuned, audience, as we'll get to mindfulness later. You had mentioned about punishing thoughts.
Yes.
And the book was a way to help us to wake up those punishing thoughts, or wake up to. Can you describe that a little bit further?
Recognizing that that's what is happening, and recognizing that we're not our thoughts. So the book takes, first, I believe people, when we learn how our mind works, then we can understand we're wired for negativity, we're wired for fight or flight, and our body just does these things. And so in the beginning, I just have a brief, what neuroscience is, and, how we're wired, and, the fight or flight, the negativity bias that we have in our brains. So my feeling is once we gain that wisdom and have an understanding, then we move to who we really aren't. We're not our thoughts, because our thoughts are transitory. The thoughts that you were 5 years ago have nothing to do with who you are in this physical body. It's stuff that we carry with us in our memory, but it's not who we are. Okay. It's not in our cells or any of that, We're not our beliefs. So I talk about the socialization process and how we learn everything that we are. Everything that we are today is our mother, our father, our siblings, our church leaders, our teachers, the news that we've watched, how we're imprinted. We are just an imprint machine, and we become that. And then we have opinions based on beliefs that originally weren't ours. We learned them. We lost the interconnectedness that we have as a child. Like when you watch a really young child, they don't have any beliefs. Their thought is in the moment. They don't have any long-term thinking. They just are. And so understanding that we've layered all this on, then we start the process in the book of letting all of the stuff that we think we are go. So then there is a chapter on releasing your pain and embracing your power and what lights you up in life, like releasing what weighs you down and embracing what lights you up. So the exercise is like going through all the different sections of your life and all the different time periods from birth until current. And if you have pictures, to lay them out and to look, oh my gosh, in high school, I look at myself in middle school and my hair's all floppy and I'm all relaxed. And I look at myself in high school and my hair's all like, sprayed and, whatever. And then we start to see like, oh yeah, what happened here and what happened here. And we see the layers. So I describe it like layers of an onion, and it's peeling back. And in the middle is a diamond, and that's who we really are. So then we start moving, and then I have a ritual to let go of who we think we are. And in the forgiveness that we need to do, the stories, looking at the stories that we've come to believe that, we rotely say over and over, like my brother, for instance, he was compared to my little brother, my bigger brother. And it became, I can't do anything right, my mom. And it led to his death at 41 because he could never let go of the story. Any conversation with him 2 minutes into it was how mom felt about this and about that. And he couldn't separate himself from that thinking. And that is what we have a tendency to do. All these stories become stone and they become who we think we are. They become our hurts that are stuck to us and that they weigh us down. So the book leads you into what used to light you up as a kid. What excited you? Wow, I used to love riding a horse. Huh?
What if you're so disconnected from that and people say, I don't know? I don't know.
They don't know the story that they keep telling?
No, maybe both. I was going for, you asked me what lights me up.
Right.
I don't know what lights me up. I don't know what my passion is. I just, nothing seems to excite me.
Well, that's why I have you go back and, look at pictures if you have them, but if not, go and sit like in a receptive place and go back over your childhood. And you will start to see things because we were free at a certain age. We were out playing, even if it's, I loved riding my bike. I love the feeling when the air hit my face. I love, it's those kind of subtleties. So tell me more about that.
I see.
And then you can pull it out of people. But my exercise, I have questions that are long, long questions that when you answer them, they're meant to bring up, to evoke the things that lit you up and the things that weighed you down.
Okay. So that makes sense. And then, so if someone's like, oh, I don't know, go through your childhood, go through this stuff, find clues from your own life. And even if you're not sure right now, like you have a memory, I really had a fun time riding a bike.
Yeah.
Maybe try riding a bike, see how you feel now. Experiment and just have fun with it. Okay.
Exactly. And then there's a chapter, bravely ask good questions and start asking questions of ourselves. Why don't I remember what lit me up as a child? And just let questions come to you so that then in that process, and let it just, if you don't have an answer right away, just let it be. Let it be the question of the day. And things start to come up, memories start to come up, dream journals are, my background is in Jungian dream work, and I love the symbolism of dreams and to become the different things in your dreams. Like if there's a clock in your dreams, I'm a clock. I always feel rushed, blah, 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 like just talking from those places. And we are revealed in those ways, or our patterns are easily seen. They really are. If we just get reflective, the whole thing that I'm talking about, which is the chapter of the watchful observer, that's the place that you were saying, that calm place that you felt and that I felt. When we learn to be that watchful observer, our entire daily life situations are our teachers. There are breadcrumbs back to what we've taken on when, and there are breadcrumbs to our mission and our soul's purpose as well.
When you were talking about you love DreamWorks or dream thing, whenever you talk to that with people, how many times immediately after that they're like, well, let me tell you about a dream I had.
Yeah, exactly. And then when we can play with them ourselves so easily, even like Google, I had a dream of a hummingbird the other night, what does a hummingbird mean? And then just sit with that. Well, what part of me feels like a hummingbird, or, where am I flighty, or where, whatever that is.
I am going to take time. I had a weird dream last night. It was like part of in like old, like maybe not old, but like a community or village. But there were 4 of us that were sentenced to like death for something. I was one of the 4 or 5. But part of it was that there was so much time for the others to like kill each other. That was like, we had to kill the others that we were grouped with. And we weren't dying. And I don't remember what we did or what I did to be part of this group. Yeah. But there was a point that the group of 4 or 5 of us started being kind to each other. And I had noticed that we're not dying. We were supposed to die within so much time. And in my dream, I got really sad. I'm like, but I didn't get a chance to call my mom to say goodbye to her. And I started crying and didn't get a chance to call my sister. And my sister ended up being there. But there was still this awareness that we're not dying to each other. And then I had said, oh, if we're kind to each other, we won't die. Mm. And that's when I woke up.
Wow.
But I like that last part, but I didn't like the beginning part of me dying. But that's the fear of dying.
Yeah.
But...
Well, and the first question always is like, did you watch the news, or is, the war that's happening now profoundly hurting your heart, and you're feeling it on a personal level, and you're such an empathetic person that your psyche's playing it out in some way. Mm-hmm. And the message is, if we were all kind to one another, like Mother Teresa says, if we all smile at the same time, the whole world is smiling at once. Yeah. So that is the opposite of war, is to be kind to one another. And there is no war when we're being kind to one another. So you figured it all out in your dream. And then the other question that you could ask yourself is, what feels unfinished? I felt unfinished, that these things that I didn't do. Is there anything that I want to say to my mother that I feel unfinished? Or, that's another question. Yeah. So that's the different ways that you can play with it. Like coming up with questions and then letting you want your subconscious or your unconscious to like bubble it up. And sometimes that takes time.
Okay.
But so when a dream is really profound like that, just keep it with you, write it down, because it pieces of it go, but and then just go back and think about, what's another question I can ask? What's another question? Because it's your dream. Yeah. So to have dream interpretations, I'm leery of, because it's our
going back to ourselves, our thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, okay. At the place that we need to access, or when we access, is a gate to freedom too, because it's in there knocking. Mm-hmm. It's like when we let our daily guard down and fall asleep, it's like
Gotcha. Something how you had said about our thoughts, we are not our thoughts. How does that get mixed in with because I do a lot of like affirmation works, trying to like saying positive thoughts to reset myself or
realign myself, visualization boards. And they say, well, for them to, really have to believe that they are happening, or you are creating these things as if they are already, you're living these things as the things that you want in your life. You believe that you already have them, so you can step into them and think about all that is about our thoughts.
Yes.
And
my company is called Choose Good Thoughts.
Yeah, and Choose Good Thoughts.
Right. So that's why I call it a journey.
Okay.
And a path. And it's a spiral path, because it's not that it leads somewhere, because we are already it. So the book is ultimately about enlightenment. When we realize, have the awakening to who we really are. But to me, it's a journey there. And so to me, well, hell yeah, it's better to think a good thought than a bad thought.
Yeah.
It's better to have an affirmation, because to me, our mind feels like an album. Do you remember what an album is? That has a groove in it, and how it will go there and then just skip and skip and skip. And that. So to me, if that's a negative, that we're wired to that bias, and that goes to, mom liked my little brother better, than me. If we patch that groove with the kindness, with the good, and I feel like we have soulful qualities, and those are in kind of the soulful qualities, even though they are thoughts. Ultimately, it isn't about good thoughts or bad thoughts. It's about the watcher of our thoughts. But I believe our healing begins in, because very few people are instantly enlightened. We wake up in intervals. And so all the good medicine that you're talking about, all the dream boards and journals and, art and all, it's all part of our human journey, but ultimately we are spiritual beings. And that's what lives forever and always. We learn to access that through meditation, to me, our minds and our thoughts and our doing the good things as well, as going down the knot is like thick as pea soup in our brain. Our thoughts get that. When we're cerebral, we're literally, it feels like it's all right here, right? So what we do in meditation, or we just learn to do it through the day, even now, is like get in touch with the space. And when we do, our minds calm, and we're not as aware of our thoughts. We start feeling like, I'm feeling the breeze of the overhead fan now. I'm feeling the wood, on my feet right now. And I'm not so much caught up in the dialogue that we were just having. And so that's the place that we get to, which is beyond good and bad thoughts. It's beyond right and wrong. It's beyond all of that. It is it's who we are. It is the awakened being that we are. But what we put our attention on and our awareness, wherever we put that, becomes our life. So as you're putting it on good thoughts, that's becoming your life. You start exuding that. You talk about my energy, and you have, beautiful energy. It's because there's a choice that ends up that we do have somewhere along the way that, wow, I don't want to get lost, and I can get lost in the quagmire of my life, or I can make a story that's going to tether me to not a great place. And so it is all the things that we fill that groove with that brings our vibration up to a more spacious place, which is more encompassing than living life from a cerebral, punishing, negative thinking.
And so I feel like it gives us, like, we are not, when you first started talking, or we first started having this conversation, you're saying we are imprints of things. Our thoughts are from our childhood, from what our parents tell us, from our siblings tell us, from what we watch on the news. These are all imprints that create the thoughts that we have. Yes. And we are not those thoughts. Those thoughts, that if we're not aware of that, those thoughts can drive us. Exactly. And where the visualization or the affirmations, they help, I love the analogy with the album, is they can help stop the skip that keeps us stuck in the negative.
Yes.
And they can calm us and create like I'm getting two things at the same time. They can calm us and free up open space so that we could get back to that diamond in the onion that you were saying, or like a clean slate on a board that we can then have the space to be.
That our mission appears.
Yeah, our mission appears.
Yeah, I mean, that like what feeds our soul, what our, time here, you feel service. And that is where we get the most juice in life, is like when we serve. And so when you get to something that fills your heart and fills your being, but it's there, but we lose it in thinking about what I don't know what my mission is, and I need to think about it. Maybe it's that, and maybe it's that, when we try to figure out with our brain. But when we let that quiet, it's already there. Everything is, we are already enlightened. There's a place in us that's already awake. When we drive off cliffs, when we get in bad accidents,
You say that as if it happens to everyone. Right. Like everyone, when we drive off cliffs, everyone. And that doesn't happen to everyone. But I'm sorry.
But people's house burns down, and they have to go and stand there and go, it's gone. It's gone. We experience tremendous loss a lot of the times, and that can become our story, and we can open our hearts to the kindness of people and be touched. And the more that we are, the more encompassing of all there is we become. And it's heady stuff that I'm talking about in this ethereal world. It's hard because it's hard to put into words. But the gist of what I'm saying is, I'll give an example. I do a meditation, and I talk about it in my book too. Which one is the best example? Okay, your concert venue that you go to. It's a big concert venue, and there's a stage. All right, you go in there and you're alone, and you're in the very back row, and it's completely empty, and nothing's happening, and it's silent. And you're just feeling like all this huge amount of space around you and nothing else. And then this band comes up on the stage and fills the entire hall with like all this music, and all these feelings come up in you, and then the band stops and goes, and there's this vastness again. That's kind of like our thoughts. Whatever is going across that screen or whatever's on that theater stage at the time is transitory. But we're sitting back in this spacious that's always that way. It's the same with the space is just the same if the band's playing and it's loud as hell or not. The spaciousness is still the same. So that's us. We are spacious, eternal beings, and that can go on and on. I won't get all out there, but like I haven't got out there enough. But if we think of it as we are sitting watching our thoughts just go by, we're watching our behaviors go by. As we're driving down the road and you're at a stoplight, this is the practicality of it, and you're at a stoplight and you're feeling your anxiety. This damn light has been taken. I swear to God, it's been 15 minutes. Blah, blah. And you're like, oh, listen to what, I'm watching what I'm doing. What else could I be doing that would be more feeding my soul? Because that feels heavy.
Yeah.
It feels unnecessary.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that. I have to sit at this light anyway. That's just it. It's like the more we can accept what is, the more we can drop into a bigger feeling of who we are. Because a lot of times we are wrestling and fighting with what is.
Yeah.
Instead of, and it's things we can't change. It's the serenity prayer.
Things that we can't change, but we can choose the thoughts about those things at that stoplight that you said.
Exactly. To shift the energy.
Yeah.
Or we can sit there and just breathe. We can get in touch with one perfect breath at a time.
Yeah.
We can choose to be a walking meditation at the time. Then it becomes a playground of the good, the kind, the creative. We are. My first business was called Co-Creations, and that was one of my aha moments in life, was that we co-create this reality. It's not put on us and nothing is set in stone here. Every minute it's changing. Every minute is different. This minute will not come again. It's gone. And it's gone, and it's gone.
Yeah.
So it's like this be here now stuff. The now isn't even the now anymore. That's why it's all words. Yeah. But the energy of it is what's beautiful. The uplifting part of it. And the more that we become resonant with that in ourselves, through good thoughts, through different techniques, simple shifts in consciousness, the more all the weight starts falling off. Or when it comes on, we recognize it quicker.
Yeah.
It's all just that process. Oh, I used to walk around like this for a week. I'd be pissed off. I was pissed off at that person for years. And then when you let go of it, you feel the weight. First, you have to acknowledge it. Sometimes you don't even know.
That's what I wanted to. I'm glad you mentioned first you have to acknowledge it, because as you're talking about this, and in some instances, heal it. Because what you were saying beginning with your book, or the beginning parts of the book, it was to write about the experiences, go through that journey. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not saying just choose the positive thoughts, choose the affirmations, and pretend that the other ones don't exist. There's none of that. It's acknowledge and heal and
feel,
work through and feel.
Yeah. Yes, because our feelings will move through us in about 90 seconds to a couple of minutes if we let them, if we don't block them. We'll have a good cry and it's moved through us, right? But then when we keep harping on things, it becomes a more like in us emotion that sometimes we just kind of end up going back to and back to. So part of what I talk about in the book is feel it when those tears are coming up, feel it. And when we have this spaciousness and stuff, it doesn't mean that we're not going to experience pain. We are, but really feel it, because we are blocking, just like I was saying, we want to block death. We want to block bad feelings, and so we're spending our life like plugging holes in a dam we're going to lose that, and it's not bringing us happiness.
Yeah.
And so feeling it, moving through that is healing.
I just wanted to point that out because there's not so many times, every so often when I talk to people about my way of thinking, not my way of thinking, but thinking of like the positive affirmations or even the mission of silver lining moments, some people will express, well, that's just being naive and pretending things aren't there. And I'm like, no, I never want pretending things aren't there. It's acknowledging, feeling, healing, and then you create a space to have this the positive thoughts or the thoughts that you want,
right?
Or choose or the behaviors that you want to.
Exactly. And so much of our response is what we learned as a kid. So if you were told as a child, stop that, don't cry now. There's no need to cry. Then your message, you might start hearing as you start watching things and your response to other people or whatever, you might even hear your dad saying, there's no need to cry. Yeah. And that becomes your story. There's no need to cry. Oh, there's needs to cry.
Yeah.
There are absolutely, It's like, there's a lot, this mortal journey isn't the easiest, but we make it a lot harder by our judgments of it. The more that we can not judge and just be what is going on, it will move through us, if we allow that to happen. And doesn't become disease and a lot of other things that we're from hanging on.
From hanging on to it.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to keep it all right here in my gut, It's like,
so this book seems like it would be a great tool for someone to work on their own, but also a great tool, maybe not but, and also a great tool to work with a therapist or a coach. It seems like I could see it being used both ways, individually and with the coach or therapist.
Absolutely. And I will have an online class, and I will have a group that I will take through it'll be a 3-month, 12-week.
Okay.
And we'll go through, the book. And there will be a workbook with the book as well that you can work independently. But I think it's really beautiful to work with a therapist. And I say in there too, if emotions are coming up and abuse issues are coming up, and get to a therapist. You know, it's imperative. And I mean, I have like kind of, it's not a warning in the beginning, but a mindfulness, you know, if any of this is making you feel too raw and tender, stop, you know. And then I have different, you can go really deep into the exercise, or you can do it in a gentle way, you know, just write down on a piece of paper quickly, you know, 5 stories that you know are your stories. You know, I never do it perfect enough, or, you know, the things that you know, and then do a little burning ritual. And then that's, you know, just one layer. We don't have to rip the whole Band-Aid off at one time, you know. It's like you can do it very gently as well. And some people are all in. They're like, I'm ready. I'm going for it, you know.
And so this book, Roadmap to Ease, The Journey to Your Awakened Self, when is the launch time period for this?
It's either October 11th or the 18th.
In this coming fall of 2022.
Yes. And it'll be for pre-sale. And then the pre-sale will be like a half-day coaching workshop with me around the book, you know, right when it comes out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for people who buy it.
It's a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
I will, when we publish this podcast, I'll make sure I have a link to your website, and then details about the book will be on there as they come up, as they unfold.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. And that website is elaynekelley.com, but I'll make sure I have a link to it as well.
Perfect.
Well, is there anything else about your book that you'd like to talk about?
No, just that I want to make a condensed version, because it's like, it is dense and there's a lot, but it will have simple mindfulness practices like in the beginning of every chapter. And to me, it's kind of like a bedside book where, you know, you can open it at any time. I mean, I get distance from reading it, and, you know, I've put it down for like 3 months at a time, and I'll pick it up and go, I needed to hear that today, you know, because it just feels like a lesson for me. Okay. You know, it's like, yes, this is going to be my practice for today.
Oh, wonderful. Good. Well, thank you for sharing it with us today.
Yes.
You had mentioned that your business is Choosing Good Thoughts.
Choose Good Thoughts.
Or Choose Good Thoughts.
Yeah.
And I went to the website Choose Good Thoughts because it matters. Changing the world one good thought at a time.
Yes.
I love that. Can you go ahead and share that with us?
I can, and I'll share the story behind the book. And it has to do with my son at the time was very dysfunctional and addicted, and I didn't know if he was going to live or not. And my brother, who was like my child, had already died from addiction. And so it was, needless to say, pretty damn stimulating for me. And so I would lay in bed awake at night. You know, it's like, okay, the phone's going to ring. It's going to be the police. He's, you know, drinking and driving and blah, blah, blah. You know, my mind, talk about, you know, thick as pea soup, it was. So I started going to Al-Anon, which helps with people who are dealing with addicted people and their families. And a man spoke up, and he was having trouble with his son, and said, you know, my wife and I got to a place where we just decided it's just as easy to think good about what's going to happen as to not. That is sticking. I'm getting that. I get that. So then I started watching my behavior, which was calling him all the time. You know, are you okay? Are you okay? What time are you going to be home? He's a grown man, you know, living with his father. Yeah. Not grown enough to be out on his own, apparently. But, and then that's where the Choose Good Thoughts came from. That's where the name came from. Is, you know, it's just as easy to choose a good thought as a bad thought.
When you changed to choose good thoughts with your son, how did that change?
Completely transformed our relationship, my codependence with his behavior and what he was going through. I was able to let go and let his life journey be his life journey. I had done the best that I could do, and I would support him in the ways that I could. Yeah. But I started seeing all the ways where I was interjecting myself instead of taking a step towards him and letting him make a step towards me, you know, healthy boundaries and having a relationship. I was being a parent to an adult person who was having a crappy life at the time. And, you know, He was making those choices. And as I got more stable in me and choosing thoughts, I started sleeping well. I started, not being as fragmented. And his life started changing. And he's a dad now. He's happily married. He's doing really well.
What were some of the good thoughts that do you remember any of like a good thought that you would choose?
I was trying to work on me not being feeling like I could control his destiny.
Yeah.
So I would think of things like the Serenity Prayer. Can I change that? No, I can't change it. I can change my behavior. How can I change my behavior? So it became more my practice, and I think it turned, it became a mirror for me to get well within myself, to have a healthy boundary with my child.
Which is very hard, I can imagine, for any parent in a situation like that, and to know where that healthy boundary is, and knowing where or how to do that step forward, wait for them to come a step forward without interjecting. It just...
Right. Well, and we think that we know what is, how many people do you interview that a bad thing that happened became a good thing?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to control his life experiences and label them as good or bad?
Yeah.
How's that working? No. He might have a life experience that changes the whole trajectory and becomes the mission of his life that I'm trying to stop.
Yeah.
Like when he hit a tree right by my house in the middle of the night and I watched his car be an inferno. That was one of our experiences. Well, that might have changed his life. I think that was kind of the beginning of him realizing that his life wasn't going that well, but I couldn't stop that.
No, you couldn't stop it. I just love how you gloss over that. Oh, when I drove my car off a cliff, and when the car just went off the inferno, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I don't gloss over,
No,
life does not let me gloss over stuff.
No, you do.
And also it has moved me to open more, to not feel, wounded by the things that have happened and not spiral down or, get into poor me, but, just the opposite of
it does seem like some people, when a traumatic thing happens, and you've been a counselor for people who suffered traumatic things, it's like some spiral downward and some spiral upward.
Yeah.
How, what decides which way you go?
Well, and then there's a fine line because there's mental health diagnoses as well in that. So I'm talking separate from, people with certain diagnoses need to handle situations, and also at the same time that they can work on thinking. Because there are a lot of people in the spiritual world that have realized, well, I become more awakened and I'm still chronically depressed, even though I'm pretty damn wide awake. But I have distance from my depression. Once we get that distance, we're not controlled by that. So I think that's and I don't know if it's instinctual I think that we come to the path in lots of different ways. And some, for me, I had glimmers of the light when I was growing up, the lightness in life and stuff. But I couldn't not do certain things. I wasn't willing to live in a negative place and be knowing inside that I was creative and things like that. I wasn't willing to just throw my life away. And it was a choice that I had to completely uproot myself from where I was and move cross country with nothing to get away from the life that I had that was just too damn easy and that I was staying in the same place. So it is somehow or another, maybe it is innate, or that I listened to a podcast the other day where a guy said, I heard someone say something in a 2-minute period of time that completely changed my life. So it's podcasts, I believe, that change people's lives. It's glimmerings. It's hearing about somebody else's story, somebody else's silver lining, that plants enough of a little seed, somebody that believes in them. I know that, you're really hurting inside, and also I see who you are and I see your potential. It might be a high school teacher that believes in somebody who's having a hard time, that, I see your excellence.
Yeah.
And then we become that. So, it's that, it's like, and it's a fascinating topic, it's like the person who loses their legs and turns out to be an Olympic runner, because it's like, how do people go through such grave setbacks that would kill another person and make it their life's mission?
Yeah.
And it's whatever moves us inside, and what fans that. And that's why I'm writing my book. I want to fan that place in people to say, I see you, because we're all the same person. So we all see each other at the best of us. And
what do you mean by that? I see we're all the same person.
Well, that we're all one. I have experienced and that we are one organism, and it, physically you can take it apart. You see a tree. Oh, a tree's a tree. No, a tree is sunlight. A tree is water. A tree is roots. If you cover a tree up with a tarp, it will die. Yeah. That's how interconnected we are. If we don't have breath for about 10 minutes, we're out of here. We think we're all that. We think we're all independent, and no, we don't live without breath. If that sun goes out, if our planet goes, what is it that remains?
Yeah.
What is it that's been with us our whole life? The consciousness of knowing what we are aware of.
Yeah.
That's been with us our entire life. That's the only thing that remains. And that is our oneness. It's our oneness in the whole scheme of eternity.
Mm-hmm. I see, as you were talking, I see it as oneness with each other, human to human, but it's also oneness with the trees, the plants, the animals, the earth. Just as when you were saying the trees die if you put a tarp over them. Yeah. We die if we don't breathe for 10 minutes. What helps us breathe? What helps us maintain our breath? The trees, right?
Exactly.
And it's that interconnectedness, which, and I've traveled to different places, and I think in Eastern places I've been to, in India and Thailand, there seems to be more of a balance between collective good and individualism. Like, yes. Here we praise our individuality, which yes. I love our individuality, but I think we kind of lost sight of our interconnectedness with one another.
Our tribal roots.
Yes.
Our tribal.
Yes.
There's two basic. We have fight or flight. It's like, I better run really fast because this animal's going to eat me, and we're wired for that. We're also wired to be part of the tribe.
I'm thinking again, I'm going to run really fast because that animal is going to eat me. That really... You're so good with visual words.
Right. But it is.
Yeah, that really was the case.
And that's what we do during the day. Somebody comes at us and we have that reaction because that's how we're wired, eat or be eaten, mm-hmm. and, all of that. The other thing that we have that we're wired for is our tribal connection, because we are tribal beings. If I don't please the tribe, if I get kicked out of the tribe and ostracized, I'm dead. I'm eaten that night in the wild. So we have that. So we have this people pleasing that is actually wired in our being tribally. We are tribal beings. We don't survive without each other. Yeah. Think of during the day how many people have worked to bring us food to the grocery store, and all the things that get done tribally that we don't acknowledge. And other countries do it well. I mean, I just got back from Mexico, and that's what I love about Mexico is like grandma always has a task. She's sitting there and there's a baby on her lap. She feels part of something. Here we don't want to see aging. It's not pretty. We put it away. We don't want to deal with our, dying parents. Not everybody. Thank you when you do. But, it's hard. I mean, that stuff is hard, but our country, especially, I think, is taken individualism to a point where we're missing a whole lot from our sameness and our tribal roots. That I moved to an intentional community when I was young to raise my child in an intentional community because I wanted the whole tribe. I wanted to watch the tribe of children, and I wanted the tribe of children to be watched. That my son was watched by other people.
Where was your intentional community?
In Tallahassee, Florida.
Okay.
And it's called 𝒂𝒐𝒖𝒓 Land Co-op, and it was 100 families out in the woods. And at the time, it was like a bunch of hippies. At the time, I was a late comer. I came like 15 years later. But everybody owned their own property. It wasn't like a commune.
Yeah.
It's still going on. It's almost 50 years old. It's 4 generations. And like if somebody's house burns down, everybody gets together and pitches in and raises money and goes and hammers nails and builds them a house.
Nice.
It's like that kind of community. And that I felt that inside, like when, I had my baby. It's like I had my baby on the island of Maui and I was alone and I was married to a chef. And I'm like, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live in the aloneness. Because I think I was just feeling, I know I was, that I wanted more of interconnectedness with people.
Yeah. I visited a few. I stayed on one in Thailand and one in Findhorn in Scotland.
Oh, very cool.
Which I love it, and I want to visit more. I love the concept of them, the intentional communities or the eco villages.
Yes.
A friend of mine lives in one in India, Oroville. Which describes it. Sounds really nice. But let's get back to you.
Right.
I digress. I want to be mindful of our time, but there's so much more I want to talk to you about. I'm going to list a few things, and you can jump with what responds with you, and that's where we'll go. The artist in you, your art work and the art process versus being an art product, or your art process versus your art product, your journey, your physical journey, and how that so often people, myself included, we go on a physical journey that leads to a spiritual journey. And I just see that there's a connection between the two sometimes. When you are talking about the journey to your awakened self and to be awake versus like in media and social news, like the wokeness that people are talking about, the difference or the similarities between the two terms. And I think that the wokeness it's like, I'm not exactly sure how it's being used, but it's not being used in a positive way. And people will, cling on it to mean something as that person's, you hear it both ways. That person's woke as a negative thing, or that person's not woke as a negative thing, and it just and I think when we look at why I'm bringing it up is because I think if we look at what you mean by awaken, it's a much more holistic, light filling idea, and I would like to put some breath of that into our space, which also goes into the final thing. And again, so it's your artist, your art process, your journey, awake versus awoke. But then when you're also talking about tribalism and how we are, we come from, like if we were kicked out of the tribe, we didn't survive. So there's part of us wanting to feel a part of a tribe.
Yes.
And when you start seeing people today in the political realm, they're using their political parties. I feel, as you were talking, I'm like, they're replacing their tribe with their political thoughts and their political ideologies, but it's still that same oneness of wanting to feel our connection. And if we can start looking at others of different political tribe are like, oh no, we have that same value of wanting to belong. Maybe the divisiveness in that.
They're not bringing the be kind part into it. That's the problem. Yes.
Yeah. There's like that value of wanting to belong.
Yeah.
That is, if we can acknowledge that.
Yes.
And I'm going to pause here because I may edit all this out, but I'm just like, if we can acknowledge that, the feeling of wanting to belong and see how that is fueling us.
Yeah.
Maybe we can see of wanting to belong in that we versus them. I belong because I'm safe with this group, we, and everyone else is a danger. But if we acknowledge that feeling of wanting to belong, then maybe we don't see others as a danger, others as the enemy, but we're all people who just want to belong.
Mm-hmm. But what is going to break the barriers that are happening now? Maybe bravely asking good questions, because part of it is we make assumptions. You know, it's like they're this and they're that and they're this. And it's like, instead of assuming what they are, well, why did you do that? Or what kept you from, voting for this person as, for the Supreme Court? What kept you really from voting? Because the honest communication is what is behind why people do what they do. And until they understand how they're functioning individually, there will be dysfunction. Like, yes, there's a tribe, but it's based on something that isn't for the highest good. Yeah. And I think that is, you were saying, what makes people do what they do, and why do some people, stay depressed and, all of that. And it's like that little glimmer of the light that you talk about, that there are silver linings and that there is unity. And if we don't look at our own process and take personal responsibility and then get curious about other people, so taking our curiosity maybe on local levels, when people are making decisions or part of a tribe that we don't understand, or feeling like, well, do you have grandchildren? You do, huh? And why did you vote that down, that money for cleaning up the, lead pipes for the kids? Because would you want your grandkid to, wouldn't that be awful for you to, I'm trying to understand how you square with that. Until things are kind of dissected and get our own wheels turning within, this separation is great. But yes, holding the vision of how can we form one tribe for the greater good. That's why people work in an organism, is for the greater good of everybody in that organism. Because if I go off by myself, it's not going to look good as if I stay right here and work it out. This part's messy. Working it out with other people can get really messy. But I'm committed to it, because going off by myself is not a good animal. Right? It's not a good option here.
How can we get a sense of our, like how you said, we are all one, to get a sense of that again? From what I was hearing you're saying, I think I'm hearing replacing judgment of the others, of whoever the other is, replacing judgment with curiosity.
Yeah.
And asking the why, not just of others, but of ourselves too. Exactly. And then going back to the whole same thing of acknowledging of what really is within us and being open to others.
Yeah. Well, and I talk about and just even in partnership, the things that we do. We don't learn relationship as children. We don't learn how to get, all the things that we should learn in school. We don't. Compound interest might be a good one. Yeah. But, it's like, instead of get curious about your partner, like instead of saying they're always late, they're never home on time for dinner. Well, sit down and get curious, well, why is it that, what would be a better time? Or, how can we, help me out with this one. Like it's again allowing, instead of the thickest pea soup, we have all the answers ourselves in our brain, create that space for something to change, which what changes is when you're in dialogue. You start understanding each other better. You start making agreements. You start seeing the other side of something. If I get my attitude all up, what am I imparting? What wisdom am I imparting? What wisdom am I gleaning from somebody else?
And when you're getting your attitude up, and just to note for listeners, we both, like she's saying, that we put our cross our arms in front of us. That's not dialogue. That's confrontation.
Yeah.
And I see what you're saying in judgment. But when you have true dialogue, maybe I feel like if I'm putting true there, like I'm putting judgment on it. If we have dialogue,
if we get curious,
if we get curious, then that's for understanding and growth for ourselves, for others, and for the situation.
And for the world, ultimately.
Which is within your book. It is going back to, you have a series of questions and workshop, or in the workbook, activities for someone to do so they can get curious to themselves, to awaken to themselves.
Instead of getting shameful, get curious about yourself. Like instead of, I'm not letting that out, I'm so ashamed that I did that when I was younger. It's like, get curious why you did it, get curious what it would feel like if you forgave yourself for it. What would that do for your life if you were able to forgive yourself of that shame? Instead of being locked down in things, questions and being curious opens things up. It makes us a little braver step by step. It lets the light in, as you would say. It lets the light in.
So when you use awaken, what is
it's so funny you say the whole woke thing, because I went to my editor and went for the first time that she edited my book, and my book was called something totally different for 2 years, and it was called 5 Hacks to Enlightenment, Wake the F Up to Your Divinity, and it was asterisks, and people would say to me, Elaine, you're not harsh like that. Hacks is harsh and it's not quick. Enlightenment, getting to enlightenment isn't quick. And then, so the first thing that my editor says to me is like, well, this whole woke movement, this will probably, piggyback good because you're using the words wake up. And I'm like,
that's not
I don't even know what that whole woke thing is about. And I already have my book here. And so I ended up changing it to awaken, and stepped away from, I do like wake up, wake up, and I used that in the title to exclamation point, wake up, because when we start waking up, our life becomes so much more sparkly and in ease. And that's why I changed it. Like so many people talk about happiness, but ease, we can feel it in, when you say the word ease, don't you feel it in your body? I mean, it's just like ease.
I was trying to say it in a way that even if I said it in a loud way, do I still feel ease? You do a little bit. Ease.
It kind of leads you into where happiness is like elusive. Well, happiness for one person can mean something totally different from somebody else, and we all are like, and everybody said, oh yeah, the more awake you get, the happier you are and all that. Yeah, I believe all that, but there's more underneath it. It's more a feeling of contentment. It isn't like this ecstatic happiness or now I have everything all lined up, and it's not that at all. It's more that life, just you're more in the flow of what is. You're accepting more of what is and changing the things that you can.
So awaken, or to wake up, is to realize that some of our thoughts can lead us in, our life can be on automation, that it is unconscious thoughts, or are the constant, whether it's unconscious thoughts or it's the mouse on the wheel
or
type
the rote
thoughts,
behavior that we do. We
yeah.
go to the same coffee shop every day. We, travel
Yeah.
the same road every day. We have sex the same way. We, whatever it is that we
Yeah.
do, the same thing over and over again, our rote life. When we wake up, we observe our rote life and go,
I like this, I don't like this.
Right.
This
exactly.
brings me joy, this brings me ease.
Exactly.
This is really what I want. This is not what I want.
Yes.
We're actually participating in our life instead of just being pulled along.
I have touched my phone 2,782 times today.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
No wonder I'm not getting the things done that
Yeah.
I really I'm passionate about, or I'm avoiding. What am I avoiding when I'm doing that? You know, just those questions, not judgment about, you know, what's happening. That's awakening. That's awakening.
Not
And
judgment about what's happening.
Yeah. Curious about what's happening, and to let fade away what isn't real, and all that's left is, you find out that this just has nothing to do with a whole lot of anything. It's just our life on this planet is like less than like a meteor going across the sky. You know, it's like we're just like this flash in the pan, and we think we're like so important and all that. And you know, in 110 years, everybody that's on the planet right now won't be on the planet anymore. I remember when I had that thought.
That is a thought.
When I had
Wow.
that thought, it was like, oh, well, that puts things into perspective. How important is all this? You know, they mean it when they say ashes to ashes and dust to dust, you know? It's like,
Wow.
Yeah.
It's sombering and freeing at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the shoulds we're shoulding ourselves for absolutely no good reason. We're okay. Be kind. What you said, be kind. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we can do. Open our heart, you know, open our consciousness. Delight and, you know, really see what is here, the beauty in what's here. When we're in our head, and I describe like being on our head compared to being in the moment. Like I describe going down the stairwell at my house. And so I'm walking down the stairs, and it's like, oh, did I remember to lock the door? Yeah, I locked the door. Do I have my keys? Yeah, I've got my keys. Why did I wear flip-flops? I should have worn, you know. And then I walk out into the sun and get into my car. Okay, so being in the moment is you're aware that like your ring is hitting the railing going down, that the lizard is up on the wall, and that the light is flickering, and that, you know, somebody spilled something. You know, you're just, the heat is dense and coming in on you. You know, that's being present in the moment. And most of the time we live our life through a narrative, which means we're not even really living our life. We're not experiencing our life.
Yeah.
What we experience is our life. Where our attention is our life. My life in this moment is my attention is on you, and right here. Now I could go off in my head and, you know, just kind of be spacing out, and I wonder what time it is, and, you know, gone, checked out. You know, we haven't checked out. We have, you know, stayed engaged and present in what's happening here. And so often we do life unconsciously. And that's the awakening. That's the unconsciousness. And what I described is the unconsciousness, lost in thought, observing your thoughts, and then getting distance from that.
Okay. Very nice.
Is the awakening.
Let's take 10 minutes to finish up. And in that 10 minutes,
Yes. I'll talk really, really fast.
I want to talk about your art, because I went to your website, and I love, you have prints, and your prints have like designs plus with words, and then you have jewelry. Tell me a little bit, what would you like to share about your art? And
Yes.
let me just stop there. What would you like to share about your art?
Well, art was a part of my early life. And when I say art, it was more crafting. I crafted with my mothers. I crafted with my friends. And then I told you I got away from it, and that like scared me so much that it really got me into a spiritual path, because I was stumped and I couldn't express my creativity. So once I got a camera, and started taking pictures, and that actually honed me back into the creative world. Was that it slowed me down and was making me more mindful of what was around me too, and I didn't even really realize that until I'm saying it right now. But it kind of paralleled my starting to wake up from this constant chatter about my weight and all the things that I was talking about, my perfectionism. I was looking at the flower. I was looking at people's faces. It was getting me more into the moment. So then I remember being at an art show and going, I want to do that. And sure enough, I went home and just created. I started doing hand-painted clothing, and I was like one of the first people in Florida doing hand-painted clothing. And then I moved to Maui, and I painted a whole bunch of T-shirts, and I sheepishly took them to a store that sold hand-painted T-shirts on the main street of Maui. And I went in, I'm like, I painted these, and the guy's like, I want to buy them all. And I went by the next day, and the entire front of his store had my hand-painted clothing all in the front of, his
Wow.
front of the store. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I started that. And then my very first art business was called Co-Creations because of having the realization that we co-create the universe. I had talked to you about that. So I started, when I came back from Maui here, I started doing art shows. And what I really like to talk to people about, because I went on to own, 4 art galleries. I co-owned them with 2 wonderful women, and they were called Wow Women Gallery. And They were in 4 different locations in Florida. And then I started a big wholesale business all across the U.S. But I didn't realize at the time that there's art for product and art for process. Most artists are wired not for business, but for, just that creative brain that wants to create. But very short into a lot of people's art exploration, they want to start making money from their art and get into more of the products, which would be taking a picture of your art and making it into like a card or whatever. So when you start a business, then you have to use that other side of your brain too.
Yeah.
If you want a successful business, you have to put a lot of energy into, marketing, into shipping, into all of that. And it will take you away a lot of times, and it certainly did for me, from the art exploration, for doing art for art's sake. And I think a lot of people getting into the arts don't realize the difference between the two until they're down that path and become frustrated, because then they're feeling like, well, I'm not getting to what I really want to do because I'm having to do this art show and get all this work produced, and I'm not taking this art piece further than I want to because I need to, put it up for sale this weekend or whatever. So it's really to ask yourself, do I want to explore my art process more? And is that valuable enough for me to maybe quit my, full-time job and get a part-time job, and then be able to put your stuff in an art gallery and not be attached to selling it so much and letting it evolve in that way. And then it might evolve into sales in a way that keeps you in integrity with the process of making art.
Okay.
I'm not saying I was out of integrity. I had a different path, which was to make art that reached people that could afford something $50 and under. Whether it was jewelry or a print or a tile with my work on it or whatever. That's the path I went down.
How did you balance the production, the business side, and give yourself time to still do the process and the creative side?
Have I had balance in my life ever? It's like, how do you do 10 things at once? Yeah, no. I am a multitasker, and there wasn't rhyme nor reason. It didn't ever really feel balanced, and I would hire people like accountants and stuff, and not really dive into like making it the business that it really could, because I was off on like another tangent, or oh, that would be a neat name for a, you know, another business. And you know, I have follow through, so that, you know, I've always made my stuff was always shipped on time and all of that. And also, I didn't like, I remember my mother used to say, can't you just do one thing? And I remember a lot of my artist friends would say, you know, why don't you just focus in on this and, you know, just do your fine art and blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of like a creative explosion in a lot of ways. And that's how I've let it be.
Thank you for sharing that. Because what I heard from that is we always seek balance. You hear this word, get balance, get balance. Sometimes maybe it's okay to not have that perfect balance.
Life is not balanced. Nature is not balanced. I mean, it's in constant motion. I've been thinking a lot about this the last couple of days. You know, it's like organic life is in cellularly. Our bodies are in constant, there's billions of connections happening every moment inside of our bodies, you know. So we're going to get this balance. You stand on one leg for a while and tell me how balanced you're going to be, you know?
That's just so reassuring. I've been struggling because I have all these like creative ideas too, and I want to do this and I want to do this and I enjoy it, but then there is that business side of it and you have to develop it. And it was starting to put judgment on myself because I don't have this. Well, I should be able to do this in a perfectly balanced way. And there's that layer of when you're saying, let me pause. It will come together. I promise everyone, it will come together. Feeling that I wasn't in balance between the business side and the creative side. And then having that feeling and placing judgment on it that I'm not good at this because I don't have this balance.
Yeah.
By you sharing that with me right now, now I can take off that I'm not good at this because I don't have balance. That just got taken off my shoulders and tossed out to the side, and now I'm back into the joy of it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Follow that joy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'm all over the place. I will be until I die. You know, I will. I mean, because there's a lot of energy in creation, and the more that we open to it, I watch podcasts. There's like Tom Bilyeu, Impact Theory, and you know, there's just all these bright brains, and you can just watch their brains and their creative process. And, you know, if you want to build an empire, you know, I'm sure that I could have done that. That wasn't it's like, really, what is your mission? And my mission was, I want to spread joy, spread light, you know, stay with what is really important. And then look at, is this in alignment, or does it, you know, bring me joy? Does it feed my soul? Does it light me up? Mm-hmm. Does it weigh me down? If it's weighing you down, let it go. I mean, it's just, am I moving towards love, or am I moving towards fear? Am I moving towards what lights me up, or am I moving towards what weighs me down? And what is the other one? I'll remember it before we close. Okay. that you know, I use all the time as like, you know, things to really just kind of feel in our body. And if something is weighing you down, which what was laying you down was the layer of judgment, I'll let that go.
Toss that out.
And until then, this other stuff is just plain fun and brings me joy.
Yeah, very nice.
Good enough.
Thank you for sharing that. Good enough. One other thing that I wanted to share with you, and then I'm going to ask you to read your poem and then to share a silver lining moment. But reading I'll be 50 this November, so I'm starting the, you know, transition into aging process. And when I was reading about you on your website, I came across this sentence, which I just absolutely loved. The Gulf breeze, because you were talking about how you're now in, you moved back down to the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Yeah.
So the Gulf breeze, big water, and endless sky fueled the youth of my wisdom years. we are approaching our wisdom years, but yet there's still youth in us.
Absolutely.
We have youth at every age. There is youth in us.
Yes.
And to find the things that fuel our wisdom years. I wanted to share that with everyone because I loved that.
Oh, right.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that you picked a sentence that really, spoke to you. And yes, and it is our awareness that remembers our youth, that we still have. That's why, and I talk about it in my book, but I think this is an important point. My ex-mother-in-law used to look at me, and she was in her 70s, and she would look at me deep in my eyes, just searching for an answer. And she's just like, I can't believe, how did I get here? How did I get this age? I still feel so young. How did I get here? And I realized fairly recently what she was asking me is, I am aware. I am awake to who I was, and I'm still that. I still feel like a teenager. That was her words.
Yeah.
Well, we can sit and close our eyes and have that awareness of that part of our lives. We're not separate from it. Yes, in one level it's a memory, but it was our experience. So it's still in us, and we have all the lessons that we learned that have cellularly become who we are.
Yeah.
And we do, we are in a transitory body, in a transitory moment in time, in an eternal universe. There's billions of, not just planets, there's billions of universes that they've just discovered. So, it's like, we are all of it. And yeah, we are still young.
Still young.
We are still young.
So would you be willing to share a silver lining moment with us? And as you pause to think about this, I share it on my website, but a silver lining moment is really anything, any person, any moment that just kind of resets you into the goodness in yourself, the goodness in others, the goodness in humanity.
Well, the thought that just popped in my mind this second was when I had just been diagnosed with Hep C, and I was just full of fear, and I had no idea, if I was going to live or die. And I was 40 but realized I had it for like 20 years at that time or something. And I remember calling a woman, Susan Weed. If you don't know her work, she's an herbalist, a master herbalist. And I said, wow, I'm scared. I just got diagnosed with Hep C, and, I don't know if I'm living or dying. And she said, tell me a little bit about it. And I told her, and she said, sounds like your body's friendly with that virus. Just make friends with it. And that whole concept of making friends, even with what's hard, even when things don't feel like a silver moment, don't feel like we will find a silver lining in it. We will find, but remembering we are on some level, we can get friendly with it. Now, hard losses feel like, how can I ever get over that? Yeah. And yet, how many people do you talk to that it's just like, wow, 10 years ago, I couldn't, I would never tell you that I would be in this place now, but this taught me this, or this made me that much closer to this person, or that, so even when in our hardest times, that our choice can be to form an alliance with whatever's going on instead of pushing it away. Sometimes it's just feeling into, our grief in that moment, but in not blocking it, we are still allowing the energy to take us to the next place, to the next connection, the next connection that will be there in some way.
Very nice. Yeah. Loved how she said that, be friendly with it.
Yeah.
Nice.
It sounds like your body's friendly with it. And it's like, well, then it sounds like I need to get friendly with it too. And I did. And that's what saved me from not just dwelling every day and, am I going to live or die? It was just like, hey, friend, how you doing?
And you chose your thoughts, good thoughts with it.
I did. Yes, I did.
And you're awakened to it, to your book. So I just wanted to throw in all your stuff in one sentence. I would love to close this episode if you would read your poem, What I Believe.
And I will, with a little segue of the whole thing about awakening and enlightenment is that it can't be described in words. And I will just say that I teach that, we're not our thoughts, we're not our beliefs. And so then I write right in the front of my website what I believe. So, but I believe that all beliefs are transcendable. What I believe. I believe we are born co-creators of our life's journey, collaborating with the same energy that created the universe. I believe our minds can be punishing, and we can choose good thoughts to grow in happiness and mindfulness. I believe perfection is a faulted theory, and that life is muddy and messy and perfect. I believe we are closest to our eternal self when we are still. And I know we only have one time to live this life, and that is now.
Elaine, thank you so much for being a part of Silver Lining Moments, where we expand love and light, one person at a time, one story at a time, one silver lining moment at a time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful. I appreciate being here.